Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars through the main window. The ship had been traveling for 3 months toward the Vega system, where long-range sensors had detected something strange. The readings showed structures that could not be natural and energy patterns that suggested intelligent life. Jake felt excited but also nervous because this could be humanity's first contact with another intelligent species. Lisa Hayes sat at the communications station running checks on the translation systems. She had spent years studying alien languages that might exist and had helped design the universal translator. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she prepared for what might be the most important conversation in human history. Next to her sat Danny Rodriguez at the tactical station. He kept the weapons powered down but ready just in case things went wrong. His job was to protect the ship and crew no matter what they found out there. Dr. Kate Sullivan worked in the science lab, preparing her equipment to study any alien life they might encounter. She had studied biology and chemistry for 15 years and dreamed of this moment since she was a child. Her instruments could analyze DNA, body chemistry, and brain patterns of any creature they met. She wanted to understand how alien life had evolved and what made it different from Earth life. The ship's sensors began picking up signals as they approached the 4th planet in the system. The signals were clearly artificial and seemed to be some kind of communication network. Jake ordered the ship to slow down and take a defensive position while they studied the signals. Lisa worked to decode the transmissions, while Dr. Sullivan analyzed the energy patterns to understand what kind of technology was creating them. After 6 hours of work, Lisa managed to establish basic communication with whoever was sending the signals. The responses came back in mathematical sequences that gradually became more complex. The aliens seemed to understand that humans were trying to talk, and they responded with patience and what seemed like curiosity. Jake felt relieved that the first contact was going smoothly. The aliens identified themselves with a sound that the translator rendered as Veltar. They described themselves as an ancient race that had existed for millions of years and had met many other species throughout the galaxy. They seemed excited to meet humans and wanted to learn about Earth culture and human civilization. The Veltar invited the human ship to visit their homeworld, which they called Christhaven. Jake was cautious about accepting the invitation, but the Veltar seemed genuinely friendly. They transmitted detailed information about their planet, including atmospheric composition and safe landing zones. The data showed that humans could breathe the air with basic filters, and that the gravity was only slightly stronger than Earth, normal. Dr. Sullivan confirmed that the planet seemed safe for human visitors. The horizon approached Christhaven, and the crew gasped at what they saw. The planet's surface was covered with beautiful crystal structures that reached high into the sky. The buildings seemed to grow from the ground like living things, but were made of some kind of translucent material that sparkled in the sunlight. Cities spread across continents connected by bridges of pure crystal that arched over oceans and mountains. A Veltar ship approached the horizon, and Jake got his first look at the aliens themselves. They were tall beings with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. Light moved through their transparent forms in patterns that might have been their way of expressing emotions or thoughts. They moved gracefully without any visible joints or muscles. Their faces had features that humans could recognize as eyes and mouths, but everything about them seemed delicate and artistic. The Veltar delegation boarded the horizon and walked through the corridors with obvious curiosity. They examined human technology with interest and asked many questions about Earth plants and animals. Dr. Sullivan showed them pictures of Earth landscapes, and the Veltar seemed fascinated by the diversity of life on the human homeworld. They called Earth life beautifully chaotic and said they had never seen such variety in one place. During the cultural exchange, the Veltar shared their art, which consisted of crystal sculptures that seemed to capture moments in time. They explained, that their greatest artists could preserve perfect moments forever in crystal form. The sculptures showed beings from other species in various activities, and the detail was incredible. Every expression and gesture was captured perfectly, as if the subjects had been frozen in time. Jake and his crew spent 3 days with the Veltar learning about their culture and sharing human knowledge. The aliens seemed particularly interested in human emotions and asked many questions about love, anger, fear, and joy. They said that most species they had met were not as emotionally complex as humans, and they found human feelings fascinating to study. When it was time to leave the Veltar, gave the humans several small crystal artworks as gifts. They also invited human colonies to establish cultural exchange programs and offered to send Veltar ambassadors to Earth. Jake agreed to carry their proposal back to Earth Command and promised to recommend closer cooperation between the two. As the Horizon departed Christhaven, Jake felt satisfied that humanity had made a good first impression. The Veltar seemed to be exactly the kind of advanced, peaceful species that humans had hoped to find among the stars. Lisa was already working on expanded translation protocols, and Dr. Sullivan was analyzing the crystal artworks to understand Veltar technology. None of them suspected that they had just met the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Alex Carter received the emergency transmission while his patrol ship was conducting routine border sweeps near the outer colonies. The message was brief and terrifying. New Haven Colony had gone completely silent 3 days. Ego and all attempts to re-establish contact had failed. The colony's automated systems were still functioning, but no human voices responded to calls from the communication satellites. Alex immediately changed course toward New Haven with his small crew of 12 specialists. The journey would take 18 hours at maximum speed, and Alex spent the time reviewing everything he knew about the colony. New Haven was home to 50,000 people who had been farming and mining on the planet for 8 years. The colonists were families with children who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. Dr. Kate Sullivan joined the rescue mission after requesting emergency transport from Earth Command. She brought specialized equipment to analyze whatever had happened to the colonists. Her experience with the Veltar made her valuable for this investigation, especially since New Haven was located in a star system near Veltar space. She had a terrible feeling that the two events were connected. When Alex's ship arrived at New Haven, everything looked normal from orbit. The city showed normal power distribution, and the agricultural zones displayed healthy crop growth. Weather satellites were functioning, and planetary defenses were online. But there were no radio transmissions, no air traffic, and no signs of human activity anywhere on the planet's surface. The rescue team landed at New Haven's main spaceport, which should have been busy with cargo ships and passenger transports. Instead, they found empty landing pads and silent terminals. Alex led his team through the spaceport building where they discovered something that made their blood run cold. Every person in the building had been turned into crystal statues exactly where they stood. A ticket agent sat behind her counter with a smile frozen on her crystal face. Her hand was reaching toward a computer screen that still displayed flight schedules. Nearby, a family of 4 stood in line with their luggage, the children's crystal forms still showing excitement about their planned trip. Parents held crystal, hands with crystal children whose faces showed wonder and joy. Dr. Sullivan scanned the crystal figures with her instruments and confirmed her worst fears. The people were not just covered in crystal, but had been completely transformed into the mineral at the molecular level. Every cell in their bodies had been changed, but their memories and personalities might still be intact, trapped inside crystal prisons. The transformation had happened so quickly that people had not even had time to show fear. Alex contacted the other rescue teams that were searching different parts of the colony. Every report was the same. Families eating dinner were now crystal, sculptures around crystal tables. Workers in the mines were crystal statues holding crystal tools. Children playing in parks had become crystal figures frozen in the middle of games. An entire civilization had been turned into an art gallery. The team found the colony's communications center where the final transmission logs were stored. The last entry was from 3 days ago when the duty officer reported seeing beautiful lights in the sky. He described ships that looked like flying crystals approaching the planet. His final words were cut off in the middle of a sentence about how pretty the alien vessels looked. Dr. Sullivan discovered energy residue that matched Veltar technology signatures. The readings showed that massive crystallization beams had been fired from orbit covering the entire planet in a coordinated attack. The process had taken less than 6 hours to complete and had affected every living human on the planet simultaneously. Animals and plants remained unchanged, showing that the weapons specifically targeted human biology. Alex tried to contact other colonies in the region, but received no responses from 3 more human settlements. Long-range sensors showed that the planets were still inhabited, but communication attempts failed completely. The rescue team realized they were looking at a systematic attack on human colonies using technology that could turn entire populations into crystal artwork. The team worked quickly to document everything they found at New Haven. They recorded the positions and expressions of thousands of crystal people and analyzed the energy patterns left by the Veltar weapons. Dr. Sullivan collected samples of crystallized humans to study back on Earth. She hoped that understanding the transformation process might lead to a way to reverse it. While searching the colony's administrative center, Alex found security recordings from the day of the attack. The videos showed people going about their normal activities when brilliant lights suddenly filled the sky. Veltar ships descended slowly while broadcasting what sounded like classical music. The colonists came outside to watch the beautiful alien vessels with curiosity rather than fear. The crystallization began without warning. People simply stopped moving as their bodies became transparent and then solid crystal. Children were transformed while playing with toys. Adults became crystal statues while waving at the alien ships. Families were crystallized while holding each other and looking up at the sky with wonder. The entire process was silent and seemed painless. Dr. Sullivan made a disturbing discovery while analyzing the crystal people. The transformation had preserved not just their physical forms, but also their brain patterns and neural activity. Sophisticated scans suggested that the crystallized humans might still be conscious and aware but unable to move or speak. They could be trapped in crystal bodies experiencing terror while appearing peaceful. The rescue team spent 2 days documenting the horror at New Haven before departing with their evidence. Alex transmitted everything they had found to Earth Command with a priority alert. The report included proof that the Veltar were responsible and that 3 other colonies had suffered the same fate. He recommended immediate military mobilization and evacuation of border colonies. During the journey back to Earth, Dr. Sullivan continued analyzing the crystal samples. She discovered that the transformation was not just artistic, but served a practical purpose. The crystallized humans retained all their memories and knowledge in a form that could be accessed by Veltar technology. The aliens were not just creating art, but preserving human consciousness for study and entertainment. Alex realized that humanity was facing an enemy unlike anything they had encountered before. The Veltar were not conquerors who wanted territory or resources. They were collectors who saw humans as specimens to be preserved for their galleries. Every man, woman, and child was potential artwork to be displayed for Veltar enjoyment throughout eternity. The rescue ship approached Earth carrying news that would change everything. Humanity had found intelligent life among the stars, but that life saw them as nothing more than raw materials for twisted art projects. The age of peaceful exploration was over, and the age of total war was about to begin. President Sam Mitchell stood before the emergency session of the Global Council as reports flooded in from the outer colonies. 7 human settlements had gone silent in the past week, and rescue teams confirmed the same horrific scene at each location. Entire populations transformed into crystal statues while the Veltar ships departed carrying samples of human art and culture. The aliens were treating humanity like insects to be collected and preserved. Admiral Linda Parker presented the military assessment to the assembled leaders. Earth's defense forces were spread across dozens of star systems protecting trade routes and exploration missions. The fleet was designed to fight human pirates and raiders, not an alien species with technology that could crystallize people from orbit. Every tactical simulation showed the same result. Humanity could not win a conventional war against the Veltar. Dr. Helen Young briefed the Council on her analysis of the crystallization technology. The Veltar weapons worked by manipulating matter at the quantum level, turning organic molecules into crystal structures while preserving the original pattern. The process was so advanced that human science could barely understand how it worked, much less develop countermeasures. Reversing the transformation would require breakthroughs in physics that might take decades to achieve. General Tony Barnes reported that Veltar ships had been detected near 15 more human colonies. The aliens were moving slowly and systematically, through human space like tourists visiting museums. Intelligence suggested they were selecting the most interesting settlements to preserve based on population diversity and cultural activities. Earth itself was likely their ultimate target, since it contained the largest and most varied human population. President Mitchell listened to all the reports before making the most important decision in human history. He declared a state of total, civilizational war against the Veltar species. Every human world, space station, research facility, and military unit would focus on a single objective: the complete and permanent extinction of every Veltar individual in the galaxy regardless of cost or consequence. The declaration shocked even the military commanders who had expected a more measured response. President Mitchell explained that humanity faced an enemy that would never stop hunting them. The Veltar saw humans as art supplies, not as people with rights to exist. Negotiation was impossible with beings who crystallized children as decorations. The only acceptable outcome was the total elimination of the Veltar species. Admiral Parker received orders to withdraw all ships from exploration and trade missions. Every vessel capable of combat would be retrofitted with the most advanced weapons available. Civilian transports would be converted to carry troops and supplies. The entire human military would be reorganized into a single fleet dedicated to genocide. No resources would be spared for this war. Dr. Young was placed in charge of Project Looking Glass with unlimited funding and authority. Her team would reverse engineer Veltar technology and develop weapons capable of destroying the aliens. Every scientist on Earth and the colonies would contribute to understanding how crystallization worked. If humans could not defend against the technology, they would learn to use it as a weapon. The news of the crystallized colonies spread across human space, causing panic and rage in equal measure. Families with relatives in the outer settlements demanded immediate rescue missions. Veterans volunteered for military service in numbers that overwhelmed recruitment centers. Civilian industries converted their production lines to manufacture weapons and armor. Humanity united in anger like never before in their history. Jake Morrison received promotion to admiral and command of the largest battle group ever assembled. His ships would protect the remaining colonies while evacuation transports moved civilians to fortified worlds. The Veltar advance had to be slowed, while humanity prepared for total war. Every day gained meant more ships built and more weapons developed. The Veltar seemed amused by human resistance efforts. Their ambassador on Earth sent a polite message explaining that fighting was unnecessary and would only cause suffering. The aliens offered to preserve important human leaders in crystal form so their wisdom could guide future generations. They suggested that being transformed was actually an honor that would grant immortality and perfect preservation. President Mitchell's response was broadcast across the galaxy. He stated that humanity rejected any offer of preservation or cooperation. The Veltar would face complete destruction for their crimes against human civilization. Every crystal sculpture made from human beings would be liberated, and every Veltar individual would pay for the atrocity. There would be no negotiations and no mercy. The first major battle occurred at New Chicago when a Veltar fleet arrived to crystallize the planet's 5 million inhabitants. Admiral Morrison's ships engaged the aliens in orbit while evacuation. Transports tried to remove civilians. The human weapons were completely ineffective against Veltar shields, and crystallization beams began transforming the planet's surface. Admiral Morrison watched helplessly as entire city blocks turned to crystal in seconds. Families running to evacuation centers became crystal statues in the streets. Children playing in schools were preserved forever in their classrooms. The Veltar ships moved slowly over the planet like artists painting a masterpiece, while millions of humans died in crystalline beauty. Dr. Young's team made their first breakthrough while analyzing wreckage from the battle. Veltar technology relied on quantum field manipulation that could be disrupted by specific energy frequencies. The aliens were not invulnerable, but protecting themselves with science that humans barely understood. With enough research and development, humans might develop weapons that could actually harm their enemies. The fall of New Chicago marked the end of the old human civilization. No longer would humanity explore space-seeking knowledge and trade. No longer would they try to understand alien cultures or seek peaceful coexistence. The galaxy contained predators that saw humans as prey, and humanity would respond as predators themselves. The war for species survival had begun. General Barnes began recruiting and training soldiers for the largest army in human history. Every healthy adult would learn to fight, and every child would prepare for war. Humanity would become a warrior species dedicated to destroying the aliens who had made art from their families. The gentle explorers who had first met the Veltar no longer existed. President Mitchell signed orders establishing war production on every human world. Factories would produce nothing but weapons and ships until the Veltar were extinct. Agriculture would focus on feeding soldiers and scientists. Every resource would be directed toward the single goal of xenocide. Humanity had learned that the universe was not safe for the weak. Lieutenant Colonel Maya Singh crouched in the shadows aboard the Veltar research station, studying the alien symbols on the control panels. Her black operations team had spent 3 months infiltrating Veltar space using captured alien technology to disguise their ship. The mission was simple but crucial. Plant quantum viruses in every Veltar computer system they could access and destroy the aliens' ability to coordinate their crystallization campaigns. The Veltar moved through their station with the same graceful beauty that had once impressed human diplomats. Their crystal bodies caught and reflected the soft lighting as they worked on projects that Maya could not understand. She watched them handling containers filled with crystallized beings from various species, including humans. The aliens treated the containers like art supplies, selecting specimens for their latest sculptures. Maya's team had trained for 2 years to fight this war. They were volunteers who had lost families in the crystallized colonies and wanted revenge more than they wanted to live. Each team member carried enough explosives to destroy a city block and enough poison to contaminate an ocean. Their orders were to cause maximum damage to Veltar civilization without regard for their own survival. Captain Ryan Clark commanded a stealth ship that hunted Veltar exploration vessels in the empty space between star systems. His crew had perfected hit-and-run tactics that left no survivors and no evidence. Veltar ships would simply vanish from their patrol routes, leaving other aliens to wonder what had happened. The goal was to make the Veltar afraid to leave their protected systems. Dr. Helen Young had made breakthrough discoveries about Veltar technology by studying captured equipment. The aliens used quantum field generators to manipulate matter at the molecular level. Their crystallization weapons worked by imposing new atomic structures on living tissue while preserving the original information patterns. Young's team had learned to reverse the process and turn it into a weapon against its creators. The first successful test occurred on a Veltar mining facility where the aliens were processing crystals for their art projects. Young's reversal. Matrix was transmitted through the station's own communication system, causing every Veltar individual to begin crystallizing. The aliens experienced their own horror as their bodies turned solid and transparent, while their minds remained trapped inside crystal prisons. Maya watched through her scanner as the Veltar research station erupted in panic. The quantum virus she had planted was spreading through their computer networks, destroying millions of years of cultural records and scientific data. Veltar art galleries across the galaxy were losing their catalogs as database systems crashed, and storage units failed. The aliens were losing their entire civilization to human sabotage. Admiral Jake Morrison coordinated the largest military operation in human history as fleets moved into position throughout Veltar space. The plan was not to conquer territory, but to eliminate every trace of alien civilization. Human forces would destroy cities, research facilities, art galleries, and any other structures that showed Veltar presence. The goal was total species, extinction accomplished through systematic destruction. The Veltar began to understand that they had misjudged humanity. These were not simple animals that could be easily collected for preservation. Humans were intelligent predators who fought with tactics that the aliens had never encountered. Every Veltar ship that left port might disappear. Every research station might explode without warning. Every computer system might be infected with human viruses. Captain Clark's stealth ship intercepted a Veltar diplomatic vessel carrying ambassadors to negotiate with other species. The aliens wanted to warn the galaxy about human aggression and build alliances against the violent newcomers. Clark's team boarded the ship and crystallized every alien using their own technology. The diplomatic mission became another mysterious disappearance. Maya's Black Ops teams struck dozens of targets across Veltar space in coordinated attacks. Cultural centers that preserved the history of extinct species were bombed into rubble. Art galleries containing crystallized beings were destroyed with their contents. Research laboratories studying consciousness transfer were contaminated with human biological weapons. The Veltar were losing everything that made their civilization valuable. Dr. Young developed improved crystallization weapons that could affect Veltar biology through their own communication networks. The aliens used quantum entanglement to link their minds across vast distances, sharing thoughts and experiences instantly. Young's team learned to turn those connections into delivery systems for weapons that crystallized Veltar brains while leaving their bodies unharmed. The war escalated when Veltar forces attempted to crystallize Earth itself using a massive weapon built specifically for the task. Admiral Morrison's defense fleet engaged the alien armada in a battle that lasted 6 days and cost thousands of human lives. The humans won by using suicide tactics that the Veltar could not understand or counter. Human ships rammed alien vessels, while their crews detonated nuclear weapons. General Tony Barnes received reports from across the galaxy showing that human forces were winning through sheer determination and willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Veltar technology was superior, but the aliens had never faced an enemy that preferred death to surrender. Humans would destroy their own ships rather than allow capture, and would die fighting rather than accept crystallization. The Veltar attempted to negotiate a ceasefire through intermediary species, but received only one response from President Sam Mitchell. Humanity would accept nothing less than complete Veltar extinction. Every alien individual must die, and every trace of their civilization must be erased. The species that had made art from human children deserved no mercy and would receive none. Maya's final mission targeted the Veltar Homeworld Communication Center that coordinated their entire civilization. Her team spent 4 months infiltrating the facility and planting enough explosives to destroy the planetary communication grid. When the charges detonated, Christhaven lost contact with every Veltar colony and research station, leaving them vulnerable to human attack. Captain Clark received new orders to begin hunting Veltar civilian transports and colony ships. The distinction between military and civilian targets had been abandoned when the aliens crystallized human children. Every Veltar individual was guilty of supporting the species that committed genocide against humanity. Every alien ship and station would be destroyed regardless of its purpose. Dr. Young announced that her crystallization reversal technology was ready for large-scale deployment. Human fleets could now use Veltar weapons against their creators with devastating effect. The aliens who had turned humans into crystal art would experience the same fate as their bodies became decorations for human victory celebrations. The Veltar species was beginning to realize that their encounter with humanity would be their last. The beings they had dismissed as primitive collectors were systematically destroying everything the Veltar had built over millions of years. Soon, there would be nothing left of their ancient civilization except empty crystal cities and forgotten art galleries. Admiral Linda Parker stood in the command center of the massive space station that humanity had built specifically to coordinate the final assault on the Veltar species. Operation Tabula Rasa would begin in 6 hours, and every human fleet in the galaxy was moving into position around Veltar systems. The goal was simple and absolute: complete species extinction within 72 hours, leaving no survivors and no trace of alien civilization. President Sam Mitchell had authorized the use of every weapon in humanity's arsenal, including experimental technology that had never been tested in combat. Dr. Helen Young's crystallization reversal systems were loaded onto thousands of ships, along with quantum viruses that would destroy Veltar computer networks. Nuclear weapons had been modified to spread radioactive materials that would poison alien worlds for thousands of years. Captain Ryan Clark commanded a battle group assigned to destroy every Veltar research facility in the outer systems. His ships carried specialized weapons designed to completely vaporize crystal structures and leave nothing but empty space. The aliens' beautiful cities would be reduced to cosmic dust, and their art galleries would become clouds of scattered atoms. Lieutenant Colonel Maya Singh led ground assault teams that would eliminate any Veltar individuals who survived the orbital bombardment. Her soldiers carried crystallization weapons captured from the aliens and modified to cause maximum suffering. The Veltar would experience the same terror they had inflicted on human families as their bodies slowly turned to crystal while their minds remained conscious. Dr. Young monitored the weapon systems from her laboratory, where teams of scientists made final adjustments to the crystallization reversal technology. The modified weapons would not just crystallize Veltar bodies, but would trap their consciousness in crystal prisons for eternity. The aliens who had turned human children into art would become decorations themselves, unable to move or speak, but fully aware of their fate. Admiral Jake Morrison received confirmation that every human fleet was in position and ready to begin the attack. 300 battle groups surrounded 47 Veltar systems, while stealth ships infiltrated alien space to plant quantum viruses. The coordination required to synchronize attacks across the galaxy represented the greatest military achievement in human history. The operation began with simultaneous strikes on every Veltar communication system in the galaxy. Human hackers activated viruses that destroyed alien computer networks, while jamming systems prevented the Veltar from warning each other about the attacks. Within minutes, the aliens lost contact with their colonies and research stations, leaving each world isolated and defenseless. Captain Clark's battle group arrived at Veltar System 7, where the aliens maintained their largest art gallery. The facility contained crystallized beings from 18 different species, including thousands of humans from the destroyed colonies. Clark's orders were to destroy the gallery completely and ensure that no trace remained of the Veltar's collection of preserved consciousness. The human ships opened fire with weapons designed specifically to shatter crystal structures. The beautiful alien gallery exploded in brilliant flashes of light as crystallized beings were finally released from their prisons. Clark watched through his sensors as millions of preserved individuals were freed from their crystal tombs through complete destruction of their alien captors' artwork. Maya's ground forces landed on Veltar colonies where the aliens had retreated to underground shelters, hoping to survive the orbital bombardment. Human soldiers swept through crystal cities using portable crystallization weapons to hunt down every alien survivor. The Veltar, who had once moved with graceful beauty, now fled in terror as their own technology was used against them. Dr. Young activated the galaxy-wide crystallization reversal system that used Veltar quantum communication networks to deliver the weapon directly to alien brains. Every Veltar individual connected to their species' shared consciousness network began crystallizing simultaneously. The aliens experienced collective horror as their entire species was transformed into crystal statues across dozens of star systems. Admiral Morrison coordinated the assault on Christhaven itself, where the Veltar leadership had gathered in their most beautiful city. The alien capital was a masterpiece of crystal architecture that had taken millions of years to build. Human weapons reduced the ancient city to rubble in less than an hour, while crystallization beams turned every alien resident into decorative statues. The Veltar attempt to surrender came too late to matter. Their final transmission reached Earth 43 hours after Operation Tabula Rasa began, when most of their species was already dead. The alien leadership offered to reverse the crystallization of all human colonies and provide advanced technology in exchange for ceasefire. President Mitchell's response was broadcast across the galaxy for all species to hear. The human president explained that mercy was no longer possible because the Veltar had crossed a line that could never be forgiven. The aliens had turned human, families into art projects, and treated children like decorative objects. Such crimes against existence itself demanded complete extinction as punishment. Humanity would accept nothing less than total species death. Captain Clark reported the destruction of the last Veltar research facility, where scientists had been studying human consciousness patterns extracted from crystallized colonists. The facility's destruction freed the preserved minds of 50,000 humans who had been tortured for months as experimental subjects. Their liberation came through the complete annihilation of their captors and all their works. Maya's teams eliminated the final groups of Veltar survivors hiding in underground complexes throughout their former territory. The aliens who had once seemed so beautiful and graceful died screaming as crystallization weapons turned them into the same kind of art they had made from other species. Justice was served through the application of their own cruel technology. Dr. Sabastei. Young confirmed that the crystallization reversal system had successfully eliminated every Veltar individual connected to their species' communication network. The few aliens who had been isolated from the network were hunted down by human forces and killed with conventional weapons. No member of the species would be allowed to survive and continue their crimes against other civilizations. Admiral Parker received reports from every battle group confirming mission success. The Veltar species had been completely eliminated in 68 hours and 14 minutes. Every alien city had been destroyed, every research facility had been vaporized, and every individual had been killed. Humanity had achieved perfect xenocide against the species that had threatened their existence. The final phase of Operation Tabula Rasa involved the complete destruction of all Veltar technology and cultural artifacts. Human engineers used antimatter weapons to collapse the quantum fields that powered alien cities. Crystal structures that had stood for millions of years crumbled into dust as their supporting energy systems failed. Soon, nothing would remain to show that the Veltar had ever existed. President Mitchell announced the successful completion of humanity's first xenocide campaign to representatives of every known species in the galaxy. The Veltar no longer existed and would never again threaten any civilization with their twisted art projects. Other species now understood that humanity would go to any length to protect innocent life from predators who saw people as objects to be collected. Dr. Kate Sullivan stood in the laboratory aboard the UES Liberation, watching her instruments work to reverse the crystallization of a young girl from New Haven Colony. The child had been transformed into crystal art 3 years ago, but Dr. Helen Young's breakthrough technology offered hope for restoration. Slowly, the crystal structure dissolved as organic molecules reformed and blood began flowing through tiny veins. The girl's eyes opened, and she took her first breath in over 1,000 days. Admiral Jake Morrison commanded the fleet that traveled from world to world, liberating crystallized beings from destroyed Veltar galleries. Human ships carried specialized equipment designed to restore the preserved victims using modified alien technology. Not every crystallized person could be saved, because some had been damaged during the war, but thousands were successfully returned to life. President Sam Mitchell met with representatives from 17 different species whose people had been crystallized by the Veltar over millions of years. The aliens had preserved beings from across the galaxy as art projects and research subjects. Each species received detailed reports about the liberation of their people and the complete destruction of their captors. Gratitude mixed with horror, as they learned the full extent of Veltar crimes. Captain Ryan Clark supervised the systematic destruction of every remaining Veltar structure in the galaxy. His ships used antimatter weapons to completely vaporize crystal cities and research facilities until nothing remained but empty space. The beautiful architecture that had once impressed human visitors was erased from existence, along with every trace of the civilization that had created it. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the complete extinction of the Veltar species and its implications for interstellar relations. Representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered to discuss humanity's unprecedented act of xenocide. Some species expressed concern about human willingness to destroy entire civilizations, while others praised humanity for eliminating a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. Dr. Sullivan published her research on crystallization reversal, technology making the knowledge available to every species in the galaxy. Her work would ensure that if any similar threat ever emerged, other civilizations would have the tools needed to protect their people. The technology that had once been used to preserve beings as art could now be used to free them from crystal. Prison's Lieutenant Colonel Maya Singh established the Memorial Division responsible for documenting every crime committed by the Veltar species. Human historians worked with liberated beings from other species to compile a complete record of alien atrocities spanning millions of years. The evidence would serve as justification for humanity's actions and warning to future generations about predators that disguised themselves as artists. Admiral Linda Parker oversaw the establishment of monitoring stations throughout former Veltar space to ensure that no trace of the alien species remained. Human sensors would detect any crystallization, technology that might have survived the war. The galaxy would be protected from any remaining Veltar artifacts that could pose threats to living beings. The liberated colonies began rebuilding their civilizations with human assistance and protection. Families reunited with crystallized, relatives who had been preserved in alien galleries. Children who had been transformed while playing were restored to continue their interrupted games. Communities that had been frozen in crystal were given the chance to resume their lives after years of conscious imprisonment. Dr. Young continued her research into quantum consciousness transfer technology, but focused on healing applications rather than weapons. Her team developed methods to repair damage caused by crystallization and restore memories that had been corrupted during preservation. The science that had once served evil purposes was transformed into tools for helping traumatized survivors recover from their experiences. Captain Clark received new orders to begin removing all references to the Veltar species from galactic databases and historical records. Human teams systematically erased every mention of the aliens from star charts, cultural databases, and scientific journals. The species that had turned other beings into art would be forgotten as completely as they had been destroyed. President Mitchell addressed the Galactic Council when questioned about humanity's decision to commit xenocide against an entire species. He explained that some crimes were so severe that they demanded permanent solutions. The Veltar had not just killed individuals, but had tortured consciousness itself by trapping aware minds in crystal prisons. Such evil could not be allowed to exist anywhere in the universe. The other species of the galaxy watched as humanity methodically erased every trace of Veltar civilization from existence. Ancient trade routes were renamed to remove alien designations. Star systems that had once been called by Veltar names received new identifications. Cultural artifacts that mentioned the crystalline species were modified to remove all references. It was as if the aliens had never existed. Admiral Morrison established the Protection Fleet, dedicated to preventing future threats against conscious beings. Human ships would patrol the galaxy watching for any species that showed signs of treating other civilizations as objects to be collected or preserved. The fleet would ensure that no other predator species could emerge to threaten innocent life. Dr. Sullivan opened the Consciousness Liberation Institute, where researchers from multiple species worked together to develop defenses against mental imprisonment technologies. The facility would serve as a center for studying any future threats to awareness and consciousness. Scientists would be prepared to counter any attempts to turn living beings into preserved specimens. Maya Singh trained the first generation of Galactic Protection Forces composed of volunteers from species that had been victimized by the Veltar. These soldiers would specialize in fighting enemies that threatened consciousness and mental freedom. Their mission was to ensure that no species would ever again experience the horror of being transformed into art for alien entertainment. The memorial wall on Earth displayed the names of every being who had been crystallized by the Veltar over millions of years. Representatives from 17 species contributed to the monument, which served as a reminder of the cost of allowing evil to exist unchallenged. The wall carried a simple message: some crimes demand extinction as punishment. President Mitchell signed the Consciousness Protection Accords with every major species in the galaxy. The agreement established principles for protecting mental freedom and declared that any attempt to preserve conscious beings against their will would be considered a crime worthy of species extinction. Humanity had shown that they were willing to enforce such justice regardless of cost. The galaxy entered a new age where predator species understood that their actions would have permanent consequences. Children of various civilizations grew up hearing stories about the beautiful crystalline aliens whose name was never spoken again. They learned that some mistakes were too terrible to allow survival and that justice sometimes required the complete elimination of evil. Admiral Parker filed the final report on Operation Tabula Rasa, confirming that the Veltar species had been completely eliminated from existence. No individuals survived, no technology remained functional, and no records preserved. Their history. The aliens who had turned conscious beings into art had themselves become nothing more than a cautionary tale told to children across the galaxy. In the vast library of galactic history, there existed a single blank page where once the records of a crystalline species had been kept. Humanity guarded that empty space, ensuring it remained forever vacant as a reminder that some crimes against existence itself would not be tolerated no matter the cost of justice.